Following the medieval times, there was about a century and a half where the music of the Renaissance times became at the forefront of the musical world. Now, some of you might be familiar with the term of Renaissance from other classes that you have taken, but the Renaissance means a rebirth. What ended up happening is, after the medieval times have passed, there was a certain like a sigh of relief in a sense, because there was a terrible, terrible time for Europe. There were a lot of hunger, there were a lot of diseases that killed a lot of people. But at about 1450, 15th century or so, there were a calmer lifestyle in a sense. People have become more educated. Um, there weren't as many issues with the barbarians, there weren't as many wars. So art and culture became a lot more the focus of the um, people of those particular times. So the idea of going back to studying art and culture of the ancient Greek and Romans became popular. And this idea resulted in the Renaissance, in a rebirth, in a return to the Greek and Roman culture. Because if we think about it, there was a lot of things, a lot of important things that those two cultures, the ancient cultures, the philosophers, the writers, the mathematicians, a lot, they added a lot to the uh, culture world overall, and they really came up with things that we even use to this day. One of the idea that relates to music was that music became more expressive. Composers believed music should underscore the images painted by the text. So it wasn't necessarily that they're going against the medieval music of the idea of not having any bother of the worship experience, but composers tried to challenge themselves as well as the listener and to create more than background music for religious purposes. So they really try to influence they really try to underscore the images painted by the text. They really try to influence what the listener was feeling as well. So some of the topics that I want you to read about are the music of Josquin des Prez, and he's a composer who came up with the Renaissance motet. Now, the Renaissance motet is a composition for choir, it's in Latin, and it's meant to be sung in church. The Again, it's church music, but it's very different than the medieval church music. It has words, it features polyphony, and there's a lot more happening than it did in a Gregorian chant. For example, we have the idea of imitation, where each voice enters by itself and carries the same motif. The imitation is again the idea of a canon, where we have a melody that repeats itself, but it repeats itself at different times in different voices. What happened next was that after Josquin des Prez and after his followers began writing motets that were more and more complex, uh, a lot of church members, a lot of, uh, I guess, church clerics became offended by it because it wasn't just it was too complex. It didn't really make a lot of sense with the worship experience. Composers began to really showcase themselves more so than showcase God or showcase the idea of worshiping God. This began to offend some church clerics and some churchgoers, as I said before, And it was one of the reasons why this led to the Protestant Reformation, which was led by Martin Luther. In the Renaissance, the Catholic Church felt that after the Protestant Reformation happened, they felt that they needed to also change their ways in order to appease the churchgoers. They realized they couldn't keep going like they did before. And music was one of the issues that they have discussed because they realized themselves that at that particular time, the motets, the church music, was beginning to be too complex, too hard to understand for regular people, regular churchgoers. So there was an idea that music should be banned altogether. Why have music? It really didn't make any sense to, it didn't help the worship experience in some people's minds. However, Giovanni Pierluigi da Palestrina, who was a Italian composer, really insisted that music to be kept, however, made more simple than what happened before, changed to make it more dignified, more understandable, and again to go back to be to have music in service of God, in service of worship, as opposed to have a composer showcasing his skill by making a motet extremely complex. So the Palestrina's motets were changed. His composition were very clear and dignified, and he was able to appease the church clerics, but also the composers, because many composers felt that he, was kind of a sellout of somebody who would go against the artistic calling in order to appease the church, but he was actually able to compromise both of these, the church officials and the composers of his time. So he's a composer that I would like you to read more about. You can find him in chapter 9 of your books. Now, just like we had in medieval times, popular music, the music that was not used in church, was also um, present. So this was music that again was used for entertainment at different parties, at pretty much just like we use entertainment music today. Dance music became popular. There were a combination of two dances, a pavane, which was a slow dance, and the galliard, which was a fast dance. And also, vocal music became more popular, and not just vocal music that was supposed to help the worship, but also vocal music that was supposed to talk about other feelings. And that's where we have the madrigal, a piece that generated in Italy, and its subject was love. It became popular throughout the entire Europe. It was actually very popular in the northern countries, and it featured a lot of word painting, where music follows the text. So if we have an idea where, um, let's say we talk about birds chirping, maybe the words will sound like the birds are chirping. Or where we have an idea of, you know, somebody falling down, we have the music that goes to lower pitches in order to emphasize the falling down of a particular character. So that's the idea of a word painting. For now, what I would like you to do is please read chapter 8 and chapter 9, and then there's some listening examples as well with some of these pieces. And please don't hesitate to contact me if any questions might arise. Thank you.